coming. And I figured rather than have you wait around for the talk afterwards, I'd speak and the food would come and all of this would work out magically. So I want to say a couple of things very quickly. One is that I started out on the board of my local Boys and Girls Club back home in Philadelphia 30 years ago. All right? So I'm not new to this. I've been at this for a long time, and I know the great work that you're doing. I walked in a Boys and Girls Club after a $4.5 million rehab right outside of Chicago, in one of the neighborhoods there, where they built these new science classrooms on the second floor. Because, you know, the Boys and Girls Club is not just the old Boys and Girls Club, right? We're engaged in STEM education, involved in all manner of activities. We put together the AIM partnership, which brought the first robotics into clubs, and we want to expand that through a NASA partnership, in which we just organized the signing of the Space Act Agreement. So I have NASA now as one of the funding streams for Boys and Girls Club, so you can get more of our young people engaged. But the thing I want to talk to you about for just about 3.5 minutes. First of all, it's a great restaurant. They started in Philly, they're here now, they're in Atlantic City. Isn't this a great restaurant? Yeah. I want to talk to you about a piece of legislation that I've passed, and is the law of the land, and one that we're working on to pass, right? And the first one is just so you can have a sense of reflection. There was a Republican majority. I was a new legislator from Philadelphia. I introduced what we now know as the Gear Up program. That's $5.5 billion ago, 12 million kids. I think next month they have a new report out. There's 13 million kids will be in college, doing what they need to be doing because of the Gear Up program. We passed that when we had a Republican House and Senate. So I know how to work in a bipartisan environment. That's number one. And we passed a bill that has actually worked across the country in all 50 states, helping kids from every imaginable circumstance put themselves in a position to go on and do what the country needs them to do, which is to be successful. So this bill, that's the law of the land, and that's great, but it's always like, what have you done for me lately, right? Yeah. So, you know, Kevin and I have been fighting, and we, you know, every year we try to get a few more dollars in the youth mentoring line in the Department of Justice. I even dragged Jim Clark, and we met with the Attorney General face to face, I say about a year ago. That's right. We talked about how we need to move away from this kind of incremental, can we get $1 more than we got last year, when we have millions of kids who are not getting the services that we need them. And I think the Boys and Girls Club, you really have set them the example for every youth mentoring group in the country. Yeah. That is, you have already doubled your capacity. And you're reaching out to get more young people engaged, right? So I have put together a bill that we've been working on for a couple of years, and the meeting with the Attorney General was part of this process. We've been keeping him apprised, right? Because I've had my eye on a set of dollars that I think could be made, that we could use to make more young people's lives meaningful and purposeful. These are dollars that come into the government from alleged wrongdoers, right? And they pay fines to the government. And what we want to do is to take those dollars and use them to move people in the shadows into the sunlight, right? We want to put a lot of those dollars into helping our young people. And this is called the American Focus Act. This is the most important thing you're going to be able to say about it tomorrow. It's a bipartisan bill. It's Fattah, Fitzpatrick. It's a bipartisan bill. The Hispanic Caucus has given it unanimous endorsement. There are hundreds of organizations. Every group you can think of that's doing good in our country is endorsed it, okay? It would take 1/3 of these dollars that come in fines and put it into medical research. It would take 1/3 and put it into youth mentoring. And it would take 1/3 and put it into diverting people who get caught up in the criminal justice system, trying to get them back on the right path, using diversion programs like veterans courts and drug courts and other things to try to not add to the 2 million people we've already got in jail, but to try to save a few more of them and move them in a more positive direction. So this is a bill that has these goals attached to it, and we're going to pass it into law. This is not what we call a messaging bill. This is not something where we're just trying to have something to talk about, right? This is a bill we intend to get 218 votes for in the House and 50 plus 1 in the Senate, and we want to see the president sign it, right? So that's what this is all about, because it will change the game. If you just think about the $1.2 billion fine that was announced probably while you were on the airplanes coming here. That 1.2 would mean, under my calculations, 4 or 5 times the entire mentoring budget for the year, for the whole country, right? So, and that's just one of these fines. If you open up the Wall Street Journal, every single day, there's somebody paying a fine, some company. Now, sometimes they're paying a fine because they did something wrong. And sometimes they're paying a fine because they don't want to argue about whether they did something wrong. That is, they just are what we call their settlement, They're saying, we're not admitting any wrongdoing. Here's a check, right? So those are the dollars we're interested in. And I'm convinced that we can pass this into law, that now's the time to do it. We need to get more and more members of Congress to think about the well over 100 million Americans who are suffering from various types of illnesses, and the fact that we're only funding 1 out of every 7 merit-based investigations as to how to heal them, right? So NIH's budget, we're funding 1 out of every 7 approaches to what we can do about cancer or diabetes or all of these other challenges that people in our country face. So if we took some of that money and invested in medical research, I think it's a good idea. We incarcerate more people than in any other country in the world. And 99% of them are coming home to a neighborhood near you, right? At some point, and I think we need to think a little bit differently about what we're doing in that regard. And so justice reinvestment programs matter. And then most importantly, getting young people before they even think about going in the wrong direction, right where you're meeting them, at your club, helping them navigate a better path in life, right? And it works because we have the proof that it works. You got this wonderful young lady right here at the head table with me, our Youth of the Year. Give her another round. Yeah. Howard, I said, what are you doing this year? She said she's going to work up on the hill. I said, oh, you mean you're working in the office? No, she's working in the leader's office, Skylake. So this is great. Thank you very much. Enjoy your dinner. But this is, again, a bill that we want to become law. We need members to sign on. It's a bipartisan bill. It's simple. It's kind of like Robin Hood, right? We're taking money from wrongdoers and we're doing some good with it. And for Republicans, my Republican colleagues, I met with the head of the most conservative group of Republicans in the Hill. I said, look, you don't want to grow the government, then you don't want these dollars to come in, and sit around here. We want to get them right out in communities, do something good with them. We don't want to add to the government bureaucracy. We don't want new government agencies, right? We want those dollars under the Focus Act, the money comes in and it goes right out the door, right? And I said, look, you don't even want the government going to pick on corporations. You don't want the government to have an incentive to go after people, right? Because they get to keep this money. So that way, if we pass my bill, the government won't be able to keep the money. The money comes in, and it goes back out, right? So, and I love talking to Republicans because they're in the majority. And this is a simple business, right? The only way you're going to pass anything in the House is you need Republican votes, right? So that's why I'm so pleased to have Congressman Fitzpatrick as the lead co-sponsor on this bill, right? So please sing his praises, right? And we're working on a pair of senators, Democrats and Republicans, to co-sponsor this in the Senate, because we want to be able 15 years from now to talk about this the way I talk about Gear Up, right? $5.5 billion later, 13 million kids, raved about all over the country, right? It's the most successful, it's the largest early college scholarship program in the country's history. It's the most successful. It works in rural areas and urban areas and suburban areas. It's like the Boys and Girls Club. I know y'all from the metro areas, but we want to help kids everywhere. In this Focus Act, this is about getting focused on America, right? So we're playing against some billion populated countries like China and India. They got 1 billion plus in their pocket. We got 300 million. My argument is that if we want to remain #1, we cannot afford to let any of these kids hang out on this dirt roads of life. We need to get them on the main highway. We need to get them headed in the right direction. Thank you.